with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, this is the week that the Mueller report was released. And, wow, is this thing going to die down? But
no.
Right. I mean, this is the beginning, right? I mean, the beginning. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it is. This thing is it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Well, no, I don't think the Dems, the ideologues on the Democratic side are not going to give. I mean, I listened to Chuck Schumer this morning, and he made some really moronic comments about, William Barr, which are incredibly insulting and relatively stupid, to be perfectly honest. And a lot of the commentators on that I listen to, who are obviously centered to the left, were saying the exact same thing. But no, I don't think it's going to satisfy. They're going to look for the backup material. They're going to do everything they can. But one thing that's for sure, that there was no collusion, and there was no how can you obstruct in an event that was a non-colludable, indictable event in the first place? So we have a very strange situation. People living in La La Land. And no, I don't think it's going to go away, Neil. I think the Dems and the hardline guys and women are going to keep digging in and looking for more stuff and keep separating the folks in America. And they're not doing their job that they were elected to do, and that's to make America better.
Well, it's this, Rich, that, as they continue to on with this, whatever it is, investigation, incessant investigations, nonstop, whatever it is, keep on going down the road, keep on going down, just hoping and praying you're going to find something. They're distracting from what they should be doing, which is policy debate, putting forth policies that will get them elected come 2020, right? So they're not going to have any platform to run on other than we just investigate. That's our job. We just investigate. We don't have any ideas. We have no platform. We're just going to investigate. And whatever ideas we do have, I mean, like the Green New Deal, like free college tuition, like Medicare for all, and all of that sort of stuff, I mean, it's just non-starters. I mean, not even with many Democrats. Can they get elected on that? And if that's all they got, I mean, is this all you got? No, I mean, so they're doing themselves a big disservice. I mean, of course, they're doing the country a big disservice, like you just said, but they're not helping themselves if they want to get elected and win elections. They won a lot of marginal districts, districts that could have won either way, districts that were Republican. That's the only reason they're controlling the House. Those districts are gone if this is all they got. If this is all you got in the last 2 years is to investigate and there's no crime been committed and that's the only thing that you're about, you're not going to win re-election. Hey,
well,
Rich,
I agree with everything you just said, Neil, exactly. And it is going to just blow up in their face when it comes election time. But
a guy who's out there putting some ideas forth, someone who I know you love very much, Rich. I love when he visits our show. I mean, you do a great impersonation of Bernie Sanders. Right. He's got a lot of ideas, right? I mean, a free college tuition, Medicare for all. The Green New Deal, and the giveaways like you would not believe. Can we afford them? And should we not be talking about maybe free speech on our colleges? Wouldn't that be unique? I mean, it really depends who can even go on a college campus anymore and speak without getting assaulted. And amazing that we find ourselves in this place. Very pleased to have on with us right now Gary Wolfram. He's an economics professor at Hillsdale College. Gary, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thank you for having me.
So you published a piece just recently. It was in Fox Business. And the title is Tuition-Free College, Not Quite the Deal Democrats expect? So this is another one of those ways. Hey, control the masses. Whether you want to control healthcare, you want to control energy. Okay, now you want to control the colleges by this massive giveaway, free college tuition. So why is it not the deal that Democrats expect?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is it's really impossible to figure out how this thing would be supposed to work. And second of all is, why are you talking about trying to push people into college right now when you have a shortage of skilled labor, right? In fact, the Associated Builders and Contractors estimated that there's more than 400,000 jobs that they're waiting to be filled. 80% of construction firms have a hard time finding skilled labor. There's a shortage of truck drivers who earn about $80,000 a year of more than $50,000. So you wonder, okay, why are we taking people that would be more productive as a welder and trying to push them into a college? And, I've been teaching at colleges since 1976. I probably shouldn't mention how old I am, but and so I have an incentive to want to have people want to show up at my door, but at my college door. But still, as an economist, we'd say this is just silly in terms of how we're allocating this. And then second of all is the main reason that college tuition is so expensive today is because the federal government has gotten so involved in giving Pell Grants and giving loans, et cetera. And imagine that if we gave, if the federal government said, okay, we're going to give everybody large grants to go to the movies. Well, wouldn't we be expecting to see an increase in the price of movie tickets, right? It's pretty simple. You shift the demand curve to the right, and you're going to drive up the prices. So, actually, I wrote a piece in 2005 for the Cato Institute, and it was talking about how these government programs were going to drive up the price of tuition, and of course, that's exactly what we're seeing. So now what you've done is you've made it so that tuition is really expensive through government action. And now you're going to turn around and say, oh, how are we going to solve this? Oh, we're going to make it free. And that's just totally ridiculous.
Well, I think you're 100% correct. Like, if you guarantee free tuition for everybody, the one thing that will happen is that the colleges will definitely take advantage of exactly what you just said. If they did that, one of the reasons we have such high debt with students is that the availability of funds through government programs, or before that the private sector, i.e. Sallie Mae, which has now been taken over. And what happened to that? Well, student debt went flying. The coffers at the universities went flying as well. So who really benefits from that, and who really underwrites that? Oh, that's right, everybody. Except everybody's paying the taxes, and the colleges are making the money, and it just seems a complete conundrum as to how that's a benefit to everyone.
Well, even so, there's a number of colleges that aren't doing too well, but what's happening is when you have lots and lots of more people showing up at your door, you have to raise your expenditures. But Richard Vedder, who's a friend of mine that just retired from Ohio University, he wrote a book called Going Broke by Degree, where he talks about why there's so much ill spending in the higher education market. And a good deal of that is because we don't produce higher education the same way that we produce cell phones or anything else. We have all this government intervention, so we shouldn't be surprised to see that there's a lot of distortion and the prices are inordinately high.
Just because you get something for free doesn't necessarily mean that there's a value to it. And it doesn't necessarily mean exactly what you say, that you're going to be successful with that. If you have skin in the game, then it means something to you. It's sort of like the state university systems established in California and then followed by Governor Rockefeller in New York State back in the 60s, created an environment that gave everybody an opportunity to go to a state university school, but yet they paid fairly little to go to it. But everybody had a chance and had the opportunity to pay for their education, which, that means something to you along the way. Look at free housing. Very often people get free housing. Doesn't necessarily mean that free housing is going to look too good much later. So I think you have to have everyone have a stake in the game.
Oh, exactly. And in fact, Jim Buchanan, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics, he wrote a book in 1968 basically saying what you just said, that, once the price is really low or free, what's going to happen is you're just going to show up there. Even if the marginal benefit to you is pretty small, if the marginal cost to you is really small, then you're going to end up there instead of another place that you could be doing better. And now, and think about how this thing's going to work. If you have free tuition, okay, one of two things is going to happen. One is the government's going to pay for the tuition, and if I'm a college, why wouldn't I start charging $150,000 a year, right? Because the government is going to pay for it all. Well, what's going to happen is the government's going to go, oh, wow, hokey smokes, Bullwinkle, this is costing way more than we thought. So it will start setting the price, right? And it will start setting the price politically. The idea would be to set the price really low. So then what am I supposed to do? If I'm a college, do I have to accept every student that shows up? And is the government going to tell me, oh, we're going to pay $1,500 a year for the tuition? How am I going to afford the buildings? How am I going to afford the faculty? So either way, it's going to end up with it can't function. Either it will be enormously expensive from the taxpayer side, or you'll probably wipe out half the higher education industry.
Yeah, fascinating. Hey, Gary, we got to end it there, but a great topic. Very good. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this as the campaign season unfolds. Gary Wolfram from Hillsdale College talking about is free tuition the solution? Hey, Gary, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to check in on what's going on with immigration. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, this kind of reminds me of the Obamacare thing, right? You know, it was how many doctors left their profession because, you know, they couldn't afford to be a doctor anymore, right? The government was dictating what they would make, how much they would make, the cost of liability insurance and malpractice insurance and all of that skyrocketing as other healthcare costs go. The insurance industry also cashing in on a government subsidized, a government funded, a government controlled, a government regulated healthcare industry. Everybody's coming to this party with their hands out. Imagine that. You know, that could happen to our educational system. Yeah, and by the way, people from all over the world come here. They come here because our hospitals are some of the best in the world, and because it is privatized, and people come to our colleges and universities because they are the best in the world because they are privatized. But the moment you get the government involved, it's all going to go down the tubes. I think that's what Gary was telling us.
Well, what happens if everybody has a chance to go to college, but nobody can get in because the rooms are full? I mean, that's what we were talking about before. You just said it with healthcare. What if you have nationalized healthcare? The private firms are all gone. That's what's going to happen.
Well, it becomes ration because it cannot support it.
You have healthcare coverage, but you have no healthcare
because they don't make money yet.
Right, and more importantly, you know, in the healthcare environment, what doctor is going to take 10 cents or 20 cents on the dollar? You know, as opposed to being in the private sector and having a better negotiated rate. Their incentive for the hard work they put in to get to be a neurosurgeon is gone. And so you're going to have fewer doctors. Look, there are a lot of doctors out there right now that, won't take Medicare, certainly won't take Medicaid, and certainly won't take Obamacare. They just are not looking for any of that. They want a very strict, you know, concierge service where someone who can afford to pay for it in the private sector, paying an annual fee, by the way, of $1,800 to $2,400 a year just for the right to see that doctor. That's what they're looking for. They do not want to be in this public sector where exactly what you just said is correct. They are told who to do, where to do, how to do, you know, what they're going to charge, and when they can work and when they cannot work. And ultimately, who makes that decision for that new hip? The doctor or the supplier of the the service to that doctor, and that becomes some bureaucrat sitting somewhere, in Virginia or Washington, D.C. Pretty scary stuff, Neil. Education would go the same route.
So let's talk about immigration. I mean, that's also a topic right now that getting a lot of play. Obviously, we advocate for immigration. Immigration has made this country great. America should be the attraction. It should be the magnet, the worldwide magnet. It should have this incredible force pulling all the brightest in the entrepreneurial community, in those who want to invest in engineering and building businesses. And, the American dream, pursuing their American dream. They come here equipped to help us build this country into a better place. I mean, that is the type of immigration system that we should have. But that is not the immigration system that we do have. I mean, it's characterized by going to an embassy somewhere around the world, getting a number, and being incredibly qualified, having skills, having money to invest, having an education, being able to really contribute to this country, and waiting and getting denied and denied and denied, and never be giving that opportunity to help build America, versus, getting in line on a caravan, coming through Central America and showing up on the border, and then having this circus going on down there, with people trying to grandstand and make political statements. But Rich, I believe it's backfiring, right? I mean, every country has to have a border. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country. Even Spartacus Booker even said this last week that countries should have borders. Are the Democrats starting to get a little bit rattled that this narrative is not going well for them?
Well, Neil, I mean, you want to go farther? Let's talk about, now that you brought up Spartacus. I don't like this guy. I think he did a miserable job in Newark, and there are a lot of people out there who third person omniscient are saying that. But this is what he said on the internet. Cory Booker said, this is relating to Trump's idea to bring the illegal immigrants into the sanctuary cities. He said, Trump is trying to pit Americans against each other and make us less safe by threatening to release undocumented immigrants from the border into sanctuary cities. No, wait a minute. And how does that work? I thought they said, well, we have a sanctuary city, and in the case of Newsom out in California, Neil, he says, well, we're a sanctuary state. Come on, bring them in. Come on down. This is like Jim Dooley, come back from the dead. Come on down, bring them in. Except, wait a minute, we don't really mean that, do we? I mean, come on, how more hypocritical can you be?
And then we're talking about jobs, right? I mean, we're talking about the type of jobs. Hey, this country's producing a lot of great service industry jobs that our people desperately need, jobs that they waited for so long under the Obama administration that never arrived, that never showed up. Now, here they are. Should they be competing against people who have not come to this country legally, who have not paid taxes, who, are not American citizens? Let's face it. Before you can be charitable overseas, you got to be charitable at home. There are so many people in this country that's suffering, American people, American citizens that are suffering. We're turning our backs on them. We're turning our backs, and, we're allowing this sort of lawlessness going on at our border. We're not taking care of our citizens. Something is very, very wrong with that. So, hey, Rich, unfortunately, we're going to have to carry on that topic at another time, but this topic is not going away. Right now we have Roslyn Layton coming on. She was part of the Trump transition team at the FCC. She's also a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, and we're going to talk about China's intellectual property laws and what's going on with that, and what must America do to protect itself.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Hey, Rich, we haven't talked about the China trade thing for quite a while, and it's very complex. I mean, there's a lot of things going on with this trade relation. It's not just America buying a lot of stuff, going into Walmart and seeing 90% of what they sell coming from China? Yeah, that's part of the problem. Many of those items, though, sort of very low investment, low value added products. If they're not being made in China, they'll probably be made somewhere else. That to me is not the really big issue. The big issue is technology and, how that is going to play out. And are there unfair situations going on where American companies are not allowed to compete in China in the same way that Chinese companies are allowed to compete in our country? The government is linked with its industry to steal secrets, to subsidize them on the China market by not allowing competition, using all of that knowledge and all of that funding that they have, almost unlimited funding, and then turning their guns on countries like the United States to control technology. And as you know, security and so many issues today, it's all about technology. The wars of the future are not going to be the traditional wars of guns and bullets, but it's going to be fought with technology and jobs and economic might. And that's at the heart of this whole thing that we have with China right now. What kind of world do we want to live in? And what role will America play? Will it be diminishing? Or will it be the traditional role of America, at least over the last 200 years, where America was this guiding force, this enlightened country that helped the world become a much, much better place? We're very pleased to have on with us right now Roslyn Layton. She was part of President Trump's transition team at the FCC, and she's also a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Roslyn, welcome to Made in America.
It's so great to be with you. Thank you.
So here we go. I mean, we're hearing a lot about the Chinese tech companies and getting involved in America. And I believe this past week we've actually had a Chinese telecom company who wanted to get into the mobile phone business here in the United States, and their application was denied. So this whole thing with intellectual property and in the future and communications, I mean, this thing is real. It's heating up. And we have two giants right now kind of sumo wrestling in front of us. What's going to be the outcome of this?
Right. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, in fact, this is going on now with the trade negotiations. And there are two things that are on the table that President Trump has been the first president in 25 years who's willing to stand up to China. The past couple of presidents were all about business is business. They turned a blind eye to the human rights abuses. They turned a blind eye to the IP, to the theft of intellectual property. But essentially today, if you're a company that wants to go to China, you have to turn over your patents, your trademarks, your know-how. You leave it at the door if you want to do business there. And many companies have put up with that because they wanted to sell into the Chinese market. But we have essentially given the keys to the kingdom. We've given all of our intellectual property to China. They have taken it, built upon it. They're now wanting to sell goods to us. And they today are leading. They're the largest maker of telecommunications equipment, Huawei. We don't allow it in our networks in the U.S. That's a good thing. But they make largest maker of laptops, Lenovo. They bought IBM patents and Motorola from the U.S. Now they're selling us the laptops. Other things, but even down to a $10 knockoff Fitbit watch that can, has an app on it connected to your phone, which will take your data and put it in a Chinese cloud. So it's everything from high-end equipment down to, $10 devices that are still high-tech devices. So it is a major problem, and we have been ignoring it for years. And, finally we've got a president who wants to do something about it, but we have really lost a lot of ground.
I'm very interested in having you give me your opinion on the Huawei situation, because that comes up quite often in terms of the insidiousness of that company and how it relates to this country and other countries that it's dealing in the theft, intellectual property theft. I mean, it's getting a lot of coverage, and I think people should know about that. So what's your take on what's happening with Huawei at this point? Right.
Well, so there's a couple of elements of this. First of all, Huawei got going, and again, the Chinese had a vision. They're saying to themselves, by 2030, 2050, we want to be the leaders. We're gonna best the USA. So they stole equipment from Cisco. They stole equipment from Ericsson, as a Swedish network equipment company, and they reverse engineered it. And today they make more patents than anyone. So even though we called them on it, there was no retaliation. You would say, well, as a punishment for you stealing the equipment, you don't get to sell here or something like that. Kind of let it go. Well, so that was one problem. The other problem is the customers of Huawei, they get financing from the Chinese banks. So if you're trying to compete, if you were an American or European company trying to compete with Huawei, they can undercut your price by 1 or 2/3, because of the advantage they have on cost. Plus, they'll get this financing from the state of China. Now, these are practices that are already illegal internationally, and they violate the spirit of free and fair trade. And, for all of those reasons already, we should be stopping this company. But, they continue now because so much of the world has given up their capabilities and just leaves it to China to do it. So what I would say is we're doing the bare minimum. We have to do more. We need to look at not just the Huaweis and the ZTEs. We have to look at the Lenovo's of the world. Just this week, China Mobile, their application was denied. They wanted to sell resell mobile service to the Chinese visiting the United States. There were several million people. That was denied by the FCC. Again, the right decision, because these products are built with back doors. And there's a law today in China that says if the state will ask you as a company or a Chinese national to spy on behalf of the Chinese government, you must do it or you'll be put in prison. So they have laws there that compel their companies and their people to do things on behalf of the government and the military.
Hey, Roslyn, we're going to have to take a quick break. We're listening to Roslyn Layton. She was part of President Trump's transition team at the FCC. We're talking about China. We're talking about technology. We're talking about intellectual property. Very important stuff. Very important to our jobs. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we have joining us right now Roslyn Layton. She was part of President Trump's transition team at the FCC. She's also a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Roslyn, China's a very fascinating place, very interesting place. They're putting cameras at every intersection on every road in China. It's really Big Brother watching you, and they're omnipresent, and it's amazing how overwhelming, how omnipresent the China government is in watching its people. So it is really scary that if all of their technology is going to be applied to watching American people, and wow, what a concept that is. But there's something here in the U.S. called surveillance capitalism, and even our tech companies are getting too big and collecting so much information on us. What Facebook is collecting and what Google is collecting on us and what the iPhone is collecting on us, and all of the tech companies here. It's amazing the databases that they're doing, and they're doing it in a way that they're trying to sell us things. They're trying to predict what we're going to want, and then they're putting it in front of us, sometimes in a very obvious way, sometimes in a very subliminal way. But they're there, and they're trying to control us. They're trying to control our minds. So this whole thing about IT and using IT and companies and organizations and these big multinational companies or foreign governments like China using this data and collecting this data from everyday Americans without them consenting to it and without them even knowing it. This is very dangerous territory.
Right. Well, I agree with you. It's absolutely true. What I would say, though, is data collection in and of itself isn't a bad thing. There are many important ways that we use data to solve problems. We use it to cure diseases. We use it to improve our quality of life. So, that in and of itself, it shouldn't be considered bad. It's when it's abused. And what I would say is the concern I have is that whether you like it or not, this technology development is going to happen. Do we want it to be done in the U.S. or we want China to do it? And so I don't think the answer is to say we're not going to collect data anymore. We're not going to figure out artificial intelligence. We're just going to turn our back on the information economy because, we have a huge part of our economy that's very inefficient.
But Roslyn, I gotta ask you this question. Collected in America, but it's being collected by by corporations and businesses. And when the U.S. government has asked help, they've denied to give them that help. Right. Isn't that wrong?
Well, no. Well, listen, there's a day of reckoning coming from the big tech companies in the U.S. I mean, and that is, something that's long overdue. The issue is that we don't have a recourse with the Chinese companies, and that's why I think we need to be very careful about any kind of Chinese technology that we use. And thank you for your show, because you're at least bringing people's attention to it. The intelligence community has been trying to sound the alarm, and then fortunately we've had a lot of people in Congress wasting their time on Russia collusion investigations, ignoring real threats to us every day. I mean, there are real threats, as you said, on the border, in the technology we use, and we have to focus on addressing the things that can truly harm us rather than the make-believe.
Well, it goes back to a discussion, Neal, that we've been having on surveillance capitalism. And if you get to the point, I think, where the profit center dominates the reason and or the underlying cause for it, and you insidiously do it and use it without permission from the person or the person even knowing it exists, it's dangerous. Getting back to the Chinese,
and Rich, that's also used in elections. Imagine collecting all that data.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the dangerous side of it. Some
ideologue that is trying to usurp the democratic process. I mean, it could be a foreign government. It wasn't with Russia, but it could be with China. But it could also be here domestically.
Yeah, but Neal, you know what it's like to me. It really scares me about this, and it's sort of like, the Chinese read 1984. They took, George Orwell pretty seriously and said, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something there. Because in 1984, you're totally controlled, and they have the machines, the video machines that will film you, catch you anywhere you're going and what you're saying. The Chinese took that pretty seriously. I'm afraid we haven't. And we're behind the curve on that. And I think that's a danger with Huawei and all these others that want to get involved in our hemisphere and bring their technology and product base here. I think this is a very vital discussion to have.
So what I would offer for you is that there are privacy-enhancing technologies, and that, you can innovate tools so that you can not collect things, but, the data that may be sensitive, you can improve that, so it's not even collected at all. There's a number of ways we can improve we can improve this and make better tools. That's actually possible. Right now, Congress is involved in trying to update our privacy laws. We have to be careful we don't go the European way, because that actually has strengthened the Google, Facebooks of the world. They're benefiting from the government regulation of it. Where we need to make sure that it is the new innovators who would learn this. But I would say that this has something to do with our educational system, that the people coming to study in our universities are not necessarily American. The cost of education is very high, but even what's taught in some cases is not this, basic engineering that we need to help solve a lot of the problems. So it's a very difficult problem that has to be unraveled. But what I will say, we should at least be pleased that we've had a president who's willing to put on the table, some of the most egregious things have to stop.
And will this, and we just got about 30 seconds left, will this be addressed in the trade agreement with China? And can it be addressed? Can it be addressed effectively and really be
enforced? Enforced.
Can it be? Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, what I'd say is not having the Huawei equipment has not hurt us in 5G. I mean, we're on track to we've closed the gap with China, and we didn't have to have Huawei equipment in our networks to do it. So I believe it can be done, and I'm hopeful.
And will there be an agreement that doesn't include that? I mean, it has to be included, right? I mean, there's no way that the president, and you worked for President Trump and his transition team, so you know what he's about. Will he have an agreement that doesn't effectively deal with this?
Right. Well, I mean, it's also to keep give him our support and keep the pressure on. I mean, these are the two key points. We don't just want a deal that says, okay, China will buy $1 trillion worth of stuff. the deal is it doesn't fly anymore. I mean, we could also say, look, American companies cannot do business in China. That would be, you can't, because you're giving away your property. We're not going to, we could do something on the other side. But I'm hopeful that the people who are doing those negotiations, they are aware of this issue. They are the ones who were calling it out 20 years ago, and they're finally in a position to do something.
Hey, Roslyn, thanks for being on the show. Roslyn Layton, part of President Trump's transition team at the FCC, and also with the very, very wonderful and great organization, the American Enterprise Institute. Roslyn, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we talked a little bit about Bernie and about some of his ideas on college tuition and other things. But there was another thing that came out this week in the news, charitable donations. Did you see that one? The Democrat candidates who are running for president, and they had their charitable donations, and it went right down the list. And, it's like no one gave more than $500 to anything. I mean, total, for their year, making some of them hundreds of thousands of dollars, very, very well compensated people. So the Democrats like to talk about, fair share, and you're not paying your fair share. But where is the charity? Where's the charity in this organization?
I find it to be so hypocritical. I mean, Bernie Sanders, is a millionaire. He doesn't talk about millionaires and billionaires. He talks about billionaires now because he's a millionaire. And you know what that guy gave? Let me use a Brooklyn term. Bupkis. He gave nothing. No, butkus. It's a great dog. Bupkis. He gave nothing. He gave very little in compared to what he earned. And I think that's just bloody outrageous that he's that way. Beto, this phony, Beto, this phony Hispanic
O'Rourke
name. Yeah, Patrick Francis O'Rourke. Who probably belongs in a good Irish bar somewhere. But Beto O'Rourke says, well, look, I know I didn't give money, but I'm giving me. I mean, really? That's sort of like, Neil, you and I giving our employees a note saying, listen, I'm here for you. I know there's no money in your paycheck this week, but I'm here for you, and I feel for you. And, I'm here, and I'm going to get out there and fight to do everything I can for you, but there's no money. So I
but you're not getting a paycheck.
You're not getting a paycheck. And in this case, with
healthcare,
I'm not
by the
giving
way,
any money.
I didn't pay for the health care this month, so don't see a doctor.
I'm just not doing that. But I feel for you. I understand. And I think speak to the HR. We have Band-Aids in case you need any. But
Rich, it's not there. I mean, it permeates the culture. And we're talking about the left right now, but look at Amazon. I mean, Jeff Bezos, he owns the Washington Post. That's not exactly a centrist a news organization, very far to the left. And his company, one of the most successful companies in the world, I don't know how much he's worth, but he paid the largest divorce settlement in the history of the world just recently, and they pay no taxes.
I just find that
they
to be
made no
astounding.
taxes.
Yeah,
so they're all there advocating for everybody else to pay more and more taxes, pay more and more taxes. You got to pay your fair share, pay more and more taxes, but they're not paying any taxes.
Well, I mean, when you look at the list that's out there, I mean, there's a list that came out this week that'll just knock your socks off. And, I mean, you go, Amazon isn't the only one out there that's not paying. You have Amazon, Netflix, General Motors, Chevron, JetBlue, IBM, U.S. Steel, all among companies that avoided taxes, and this is from Fox Business, by the way, using a diverse array of loopholes and tax breaks. So this is, this report came from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, which is a nonpartisan think tank. So I guess they're some people can say, well, look, the Trump tax breaks of 2017.
Everybody's doing it, huh?
Yeah, everybody's doing it. But at some point, I mean, oh my God, who doesn't have net? First of all, who doesn't use Amazon? Everyone uses Amazon. My dog Bogart has an account with Amazon, which I find to be no, they have a dog thing because Jeff Bezos is very progressive. So dogs are allowed. Cats, no. They can't do it because cats have a problem with their paws. But dogs, Dogs have it at Amazon. Netflix, I mean, my God, I'm on Netflix every weekend, Neil, watching films and, their movies and their shows and so forth. Now, you have a General Motors car. You drive GM cars, I noticed, as long as I've known you. And those cats aren't paying any taxes, which I find amazing since they still owe us billions of dollars for the bailout that they never finished paying us back. And wait a minute, Chevron, JetBlue, these are all darlings of the industries. So I think all that does is feed to the narrative for the progressives like Bernie, that hypocrite, and Beto, that hypocrite, and Pelosi, that hypocrite, to say it's unfair, they're not paying their fair share. Now, they employ gazillion people, and they really keep the economy going. And, I mean, look at it now. The initial jobless claims, Neil, tumbled to the 50-year low again, this past week. It was unbelievable. Jobless claims went down to 192,000. That's unbelievable. Way under 200,000 jobless claims. We haven't seen that in a long time. So we're doing something right with the economy, but it seems so oxymoronic in the sense that these guys are making so much money and not giving anything back in terms of taxes. I don't know. I mean, do you think we should take a look at that?
What's even worse, Rich, is they're lecturing us that we should be the ones paying more. That's what makes it so much more damning.
That's the thing that's incredible. And then they go to tax court and they fight like heck to not pay any taxes, even though the IRS says we want you to pay taxes. Boy, oh boy, talk about hypocrites.
Hey, Rich. Unfortunately, we're out of time again.
Yeah, but I had a good time. I'm fired up. I'm going to go out and just be mean to everybody, and I'm just excited.
Well, Rich, don't do that, because we're going to be back next week at the same time for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.